Welcome to the panel discussion, Exciting Times for the Metaverse and the Role of NFTs. It's a pleasure for all of us today. Let me introduce myself briefly. My name is Marcel Grimm. I have 5 years experience in consulting and auditing. I'm currently mentor of the DeFi Talents program, portfolio analyst at Decentralized Capital, freelance consultant, organizer of the blockchain meetup in Frankfurt, and speaker at blockchain events. I've come into the blockchain space 5 years ago, and there wasn't a single day for me where I wasn't excited about blockchain and later DeFi, NFTs, and the metaverse since that. So let me tell you how the idea for the panel discussion today come to my mind. I wrote 2 articles with Tony Kim about the metaverse, the future potential of the metaverse and gaming in the metaverse. And after that, I thought it would be a great idea to have a panel discussion to deep dive into the topic. And I think that's the perfect moment to introduce our speakers for today's panel discussion. Please tell us about your background in blockchain and what your companies are doing in this area. One information, Philip will be a little bit later. So Markus, would you like to start?
Yes, hello. Thank you for having me. Thank you for organizing this event. My name is Markus Blescher. I am originally from Germany, from Berlin. I'm living in France for the last 10 years. I am working with the Sandbox, which is a decentralized gaming platform that is built around NFTs and the Metaverse. And I'm also co-founder of a NFT play-to-earn game called Rumble Kong League, which is a basketball game currently in development. I am in the space for just 1.5 years, roughly. Before that, I was working exclusively in the gaming industry. I was working at Activision Blizzard, at Wargaming, and at a cloud gaming company called Shadow before I joined the Sandbox as their marketing director in early 2021. So I'm still falling down the rabbit hole, and I'm happy to be here.
Thank you very much. Niels, would you like to continue?
Yeah, thanks, Marcel. My name is Niels Dürr. I'm based in Frankfurt. I was previously a business process and technology consultant at SAP. Like many others, my first practical experience with cryptocurrencies and blockchain was in 2017. Then I followed in the following years all those developer activities. So I have an informatics background. So I closely followed what's being built and developed there. In early 2021, NFTs got my attention. So I would say that was my first contact also with what is now being talked about as the metaverse. So I started with collecting digital artworks as NFTs. I joined a lot of the NFT communities over the last year. And at the end of the year, I changed my occupation from being business process consultant to CTO and co-founder of Pinsel. And at Pinsel, what we aim for is to bridge the gap between the fine arts world and the metaverse by building and providing an NFT platform for artists, galleries, artist estates, museums, and other actors to create, manage, and sell NFTs. So that's what we are aiming for.
Yeah, thank you very much. Leo, would you like to go on?
Yes, thank you. Also, thanks for having me here in this panel. My name is Leo, Berlin-based entrepreneur. Started with Web 2 stuff, apps and platforms, and then moved to crypto around 2 years ago. My first experience with crypto was losing money, as it is with most people. And then last year, I got super hooked on the NFT space, founded Star Protocol, which is an interoperability protocol where we connect NFTs across multiple metaverses to make them in-game usable. And yeah, I'm also supporting actually you, Marcel. We know each other quite well in the Decentralized Capital family office based in Munich. And just recently actually took a position as an advisory board member for the Metaverse Fashion Council, because with our NFT interoperability protocol, we work with a lot of fashion brands.
Yeah, thank you very much. And we are very pleased to have you all today in this panel discussion. Let us start with the first question. So I personally think we can all agree that's the growth of the metaverse in 2020 and 2021 was unbelievable. So the first question is, will the growth of the metaverse ecosystem in 2022 continue, slow, or even accelerate? What's your opinion?
I don't know if you want to assign someone to answer the question. I can
maybe
take this one first.
Yeah,
if
you can
want,
go.
Because I was lucky to join the sandbox actually quite early and find out about it quite early, which was late 2020, which of course, like, the game was already in development for longer than a year. But I think what we've seen last year will be difficult to replicate in the same like scale of things, because all of a sudden everyone was talking about the metaverse. Companies changed their name to Meta, and brands entered the space and explored it. So there was really a hype moment of this that is not sustainable, because at some point everyone is going to work on their metaverse strategy. However, what we are seeing is that the user base and the amount of wallets, the active users, everything is steadily growing, and I think it's going to continue like this. That we're just going to see a steady growth and more adoption in this space. Actually, I've seen a graph where the wallet adoption rate has been overlaid with internet adoption rate from 2002 and 1994, I think, and beyond, so early 90s. And it's behaving in a quite similar fashion. So it was quite fascinating to see, and I expect this to continue, as it's going to be easier to enter, to create a wallet, to understand what is a stable coin, what is an altcoin, what is all those different currencies, and also entering the space in various metaverses, being it Meta, being it Sandbox, being it Decentraland, whatever. But as this is going to become easier, it's also going to become easier to attract mainstream and get them into the space.
Great points. Niels or Leo, would you like to add something?
Yeah, what I would like to add is with regards to the mass adoption, because as Marcus said, there was already a lot of talkings about the metaverse, and this came very fast. So what we've seen also on the brand side is that brands started to build on experiences for the metaverse, and there are a lot of, I would say, virtual experiences that are quite close to be released. And I think this will, as Marcus said, especially go for the metric of the user adoption, while other metrics, like what we always see also on the OMR main stage yesterday a couple of times, are those 500x in terms of NFT trading volume and stuff like that. I think from a growth perspective, this can't grow like this again, because the base from which it is growing is much higher. But we will see those released virtual experiences, digital experiences by a lot of brands this year in autumn and winter.
Mm-hmm. There's something to add from your side?
Just one point that I think hasn't been touched upon, because we've talked about product and tech now. Also from like a investment perspective, more and more institutionals are putting money in crypto, some starting slow with just Bitcoin and Ethereum, some others, especially VCs, moving forward a little bit more with like high risk things as in Web3 and investments, meaning that there's also a shit ton of stuff still being built that we don't even know of yet, that we're unaware of. So there's much more to come, also from a development side from other companies throughout the next couple of years, that will then bring their own new users into like the overall ecosystem of Web3.
So great insights. Marcus, you already mentioned it. Facebook renamed itself to Meta. So what will the role of Meta will be in the next few years, and will there maybe be the winner in the race to be the leading platform for the metaverse? Do you see Meta as a competitor, Marcus?
No. So first, there's a couple of points that are important to note when talking about Facebook renaming themselves to Meta. Is first of all, Facebook, they're putting a lot of effort into their VR development, and it's creating a bit of a consensus that metaverse equals VR, and it's like virtual reality, which is not at all the case. Like metaverse is a digital space that can be on any platform where you want, and it's interoperable, it's connected, and it's many virtual worlds and experiences all interconnected that you can roam freely in. So now Facebook, they are going in a direction which is certainly going to help to give awareness and education around what the metaverse and what digital worlds are, which what we've seen already. Like the moment Facebook announced their rebranding, a lot of the already existing metaverse projects saw a very big influx of new users, new accounts, new wallets, and everybody really exploring it. So now looking at it from a true metaverse and decentralization standpoint, I think it's important to note that Facebook, or like Meta, is still Meta. It's still a centralized platform that is where the basic business model is around advertising and getting users in and keeping them in, which is against like a lot of the things that that are being done at the sandbox or other virtual worlds. So in that sense, it's I don't, competitor is maybe the wrong word. Like we will see in which direction they will go and how they're gonna like work with decentralization and NFTs and token and everything. But if it's gonna remain a closed environment that is not very open to anyone who wants to join, I don't think it's really a metaverse project, but another centralized world that is just gonna have their own agenda that they're pushing forward.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much for your insights. So Niels and Leo, what's your opinion about Meta?
So I'm also following quite closely the direction which Meta is heading for. I think their starting position, mainly because they have a couple of platforms with millions and billions of users, is something that will help the ecosystem, because I think we can expect many users having their first Metaverse NFT experience through their platforms. And I also think that from what I saw from the latest presentations, they also have kind of an interoperability to existing ecosystems on their agenda. So for example, they now doing this test balloon with NFTs on Instagram, where they include existing projects from the Ethereum ecosystem, which of course also give those projects quite some exposures to a billion user audience. So I think this will lead that they get their place. If this at the end will be a leading platform, I don't know, but I think it will help the ecosystem if players like Meta and also others like Microsoft do these things and do also heavily invest in their metaverse activities.
Mm-hmm. I think great points. Leo, something to add from your side?
Nothing substantial, to be honest. We'll see. It's very early. I mean, they haven't really shown us anything yet. They've just announced stuff, so who knows?
Yeah, let's see what they will do. I think the future will be really exciting, and maybe one question that really goes into this space or into this area as well is, what will the metaverse look like, and will there be only one metaverse? Maybe that's a good question to maybe explain to us, as well as the purpose of your companies and maybe the goals that you want to achieve with them as well. Leo, would you like to start?
Sure. So this is, I think, for people that are already in the space, already self-explanatory, but for people that are new to the space, maybe not. I think there's going to be multiple different metaverses in the future. It's highly unrealistic to have a scenario where you have one simple, like centralized, because once you have only one, it's essentially centralized. Even though it might be a decentralized structure, it's then just one kind of like metaverse, like a Matrix or Ready Player One scenario. I think is very unlikely. What we're seeing already with, you know, a very cool decentralized companies such as the Sandbox or Decentraland building stuff, and now others such as Meta coming in, and it's gonna split even more, I believe. And in 10 to 15 years, we might not have 50, but we'll definitely have 10 to 15, maybe 20 relevant metaverses, and each of the metaverses will probably have their own use cases, right? Like the sandbox, maybe Marcus can tell us a little bit more, will probably focus on a certain thing as in like gaming, whereas others maybe focus on the social aspects. I definitely see something like a LinkedIn metaverse happening where people get together purely for the networking social reasons that are like big business related. So I definitely think there will be multiple.
I agree actually with what Leo said. If you really look in the future, how I personally see it is that I think the avatar, like your digital identity, will play a much larger role than it is right now. And it's going to be you as your alter ego, like jumping from one world to the other. So what Leo said is like, hey, you spend some time in the sandbox and then you go to the LinkedIn world and then you connect to, I don't know, like a sports game or anything like this. And but you have a avatar that is your representation online, and it's all interconnected. Like in an ideal world, it's all interconnected and it's easy to jump from one to the other. It's a little bit when you today create an account on a website and you can use your Google email like very easy with one click. And like the evolution of this, like personally, I hope, because I think it's like it's something that I'm very much behind. It's the avatar point of your representation, and I think Leo is probably like in a similar position because of the digital fashion aspect of it. Because like if you have an avatar, of course you want to look the part as well in whatever world you're in. So we will see how long this will take. It's probably not a topic of 2-3 years, but really more 5 to 10. But I see really with the growing digitalization and adoption of digital platforms that it's ideally going to be all connected and very easy to hop from one to the other.
And I think what's also important from an end user's perspective, because the question is always, why should the end users spend their time in a metaverse? So I think this is where currently the creators and also the virtual world builders really focus on creating something immersive, where the people really want to spend their time to play games, to work together, to collaborate. And I think if this can be accomplished, from my point of view, that the metaverse will really be like the environment, the world where you spend most of your online experiences. And I mean, we already know nowadays, also with the trend of social media, that people are already spending a substantial time of their daily life online. And I think this is really like the time that might shift from the current platforms to what we talk about now as a metaverse. And in there, you will have your digital avatars, but also, and that's the link to NFTs and also to cryptocurrencies, your digital ownership that plays a substantial role as an, let's say, an economic layer of the metaverse or of the metaverses.
Yeah, I can only completely agree what you all said. So maybe before we come to the questions from the chat, because there are already a lot. So if you like to ask anything, you can type it into the YouTube chat. Before we come to the question, maybe one question ahead of that. So who are the current users of the metaverse, and what will be the future ones? Is there a difference? When do we see mass adoption here? Niels, would you like to start?
Yes, sure. So I think the important part of that question is at what point in time a user or and let's say an online user is also a metaverse user. And this obviously depends on the definition of the metaverse. So if we really look at like those virtual worlds that also like classify themselves as metaverse, like Sandbox, Decentraland, we see a couple of different user groups. One is from kind of a gaming background. Others are people who got into the metaverse topic via crypto NFT communities. So I think those were also there. And we see now on the more on the content creator side, we see the brands that are really like pushing the topic also to their employees. So we now have a couple of also a bit decoupled groups of users, because especially in the gaming area, we see less sympathy towards NFTs than we maybe see from a crypto blockchain scene. So those are, I think, the different user groups right now. I think Marcus have way more insights into that topic. But in the future, as I said, the definition of the metaverse is a bit this your online experiences in the future. So I think the future user will be like the masses out there that are daily users also of the internet right now.
Yes. Marcus, would you like to add?
Yeah, I don't have so much to add. Actually, it was a good overview of the landscape. I think depending on the platform, of course, like you have a certain product market fit and a different user base that you talk to. At the Sandbox, we see a mix of more traditional like investment types that see NFTs as an investment, as a long-term holding, as a type of like owning real estate or having like a piece of land in the metaverse that can be used in the future. However, there's also a big part of creators that are exploring and entering the space and actually making this their job already. And we have at the Sandbox, there are like certified builders that are teams that do this full time. Like they work with brands, they work with individuals to build experience that are going to be playable inside the Sandbox. So this is like one direction where jobs are being created in a fully digital landscape, and I expect that this is going to be something that's going to be it's going to continue to grow, because like at some point, like right now, it's all around building and getting the foot into the space. But then in the future, you're going to need marketeers, you're going to need artists, you're going to need really people that produce the content that is all digital native and built for Web3 and the NFT space. And it's going to be interesting to see where this is going, because like a lot of the jobs that are going to exist in the future, they don't exist today. And I think a big part of them, they will be digital first, and they will play a big part in Web3 and the metaverse, around NFTs, around digital ownership. And right now, what we're seeing is only like the beginning and scratching the surface of what is happening. And apart from this, like as a general overview of the current space, I think by now it changed a little bit, but a couple of months ago, it's early adopters that all have various backgrounds that are just, they heard about NFTs, they're passionate about the technological possibilities of it. But if you look at like if you get to know them, the backgrounds are very varied. Like you have some who are like working in finance, some are like in marketing, others are like, I don't know, real estate agents in real life. But there's just a common interest of learning and getting into the space and helping to develop it, which is very exciting to see.
Great points. Leo, anything to add from your side?
Just a super small addition to kind of like touch base upon consumption, because we work with some marketplaces, and when it comes to selling NFTs, what we see is that most of the purchases that are made in the Web3 space are also from people that are, I guess, innovators, early adopters, and most of them made money in crypto and then now spend it in the environment. So this is also maybe something insightful for anyone who's listening, that the real kind of like people that have no crypto touch point have not yet started. I mean, obviously, right, consumption, just showcasing that even within the ecosystem of Web3, all of the money that is currently made comes from people that are also innovators or have previously been active throughout the last couple of months in the space.
Perfect. I think that's maybe a really good moment to take a view on the question of the users. So the first one from Robert was, how long do you believe technology will be strong enough to be able to hold virtual events with over 1,000 people? And how many people can attend on one experience with the current technology?
I can briefly touch on this, because there is no set answer, because it really depends on the technical backbone that each respective experience or game is being built on. So for example, on the Sandbox, like it's going to be in the 2 digits that can be in the same instance, so can see each other at the same time, but can still support like millions of users theoretically. Then you have other development platforms like Improbable, that is really working on mass users in the same instance at the same time tech that is changing, of course, the type of experiences that you can have. There are some technical limitations when it comes like to the size of the experience, like the net code, like the connection of the users, because at each instance, like I don't know if I used to play a lot of World of Warcraft like years ago, and there at some point, if you had a lot of people in the same area, like there was a lag because you had to read like every movement and everything. So it's there is no set answer. It's going to happen that you can have like hundreds and thousands of users in the same spot, because like there are already tech like proof of concepts that show this happening, but there is no like common answer for every project out there, because it really depends how it's being built technically.
Yeah, I agree. Any points to add from your side, Niels or Leo?
I have a small remark. So because what I think is one of the beauties of virtual worlds in general, and also the metaverse, is that you can scale such events like from a builder's creator's perspective, like you wanted to sell. So I'm talking to a lot of galleries and museums. So for them, it's also offering a way to work with the mentioned instances, to maybe have thousands of people at the same time experience a gallery, so have a real gallery experience, without having to squeeze them into a physical room. So really, for each of the use case, that the creators and the builders can like pick their fitting size for the virtual experience. And I think this is something that we have seen in a gaming environment, where the different games have chosen their, let's say, multiplayer setup in a way that it gives the best game experience. And this is also something we see now with these various use cases in the metaverse, where the world builders really can think about how to scale the audience, maybe scale it down to provide a better experience, or maybe to scale it up to really give this feeling of a mass user base in your environment.
I think experience and user experience are really here the keywords, and it's really good, because the next question is really about that, because Philip wrote, I bought Mana last year and was pretty happy with the growth. But when I stepped into the metaverse, I was disappointed about the user experience. When will we have the same excitement levels? I think maybe he compares it to normal video games of today, or those experience. So when will we be competitive in those areas as well?
From my opinion, there's not going to be a point where you're like, now it's there, but it's going to be a gradual process of developing the platforms first of all further, and finding like use of the technology, or like better good use of the technology that is going to evolve over time as well. I started working in free-to-play a bit over 10 years ago, and back then the feedback of free-to-play was, why would I play a game for free where I have to spend money if I can just spend like 50, 60 bucks and then play an experience and then move to the next game? And the feedback on free to play as a business model was very, very negative. Like it was not adopted, it was not accepted as a business model that is viable. And now, like fast forward 10 years, like if you look at the games that are popular, they're all free to play games. Like you have Counter-Strike, you have League, you have Valorant, like you have all of them that are like the top games that are being played worldwide. They all use this business model. So I'm not saying that in 10 years everyone is going to use a free-to-play, play-to-earn games or play-and-earn games, but there is a trend that is very common when it comes to new technologies and the usage of new technologies in the gaming space, that is being perceived as rather negative initially. And I think as the market, like Web3, NFT, play-and-earn will mature, there's going to be games that move away from financial benefit first as a USP, and bring like a gameplay first as one of the key like selling points, which is really, hey, this is an experience and this is a game. This is like something that can stand on its own feet and is actually a fun game. There is a like a play and earn. There's an NFT component to it, but it's not going to be the key selling point, because to date, what we've seen as well in the gaming industry when it comes to NFTs, a lot of the feedback is around But if you take the token away, it is not a good game, which in a lot of cases is true. In a lot of cases, it's not true. But this is like there is unfortunately a stigma still attached to it that is linked to those type of games, which is true. But a lot of them are really like innovative games from a technical perspective that are doing something that has never been done before. So as we develop further, as we continue building, as new users getting onboarded and new people get into the space, and like I think the amount of investments that are being done into this space shows that there is a hunger and an interest to develop this further. So it's going to be a gradual process, and hopefully hopefully it's gonna be different in 5 years, and you don't say anymore like, hey, this is an NFT game, but you just say, hey, this is a play and earn game, and NFTs is just a part of the backbone because it's going to be part of a lot of a lot of things that we're doing day to day, and this is how I see it happening.
Any ideas from, or anything to add, Niels or Leo? Not perfect. I think there's maybe one question that we already answered in some way, but another user asked, Metaverse, NFT, and Web 3.0 are currently still a niche in the industry. When or why do you think the time will come for Web 3.0 to become socially acceptable for the masses? So is there maybe to restructure the question, do we need social acceptance, or will it just be by force or over time? There, what's your opinion?
Yeah, if I may, I think it's very similar to what Marcus said a couple of minutes ago. It's a process, right? I mean, some people join early, some people join late. We see this in Web 2. Some people have been joining Instagram early, some have late. Some people are still using emails from AOL. So it is what it is, and I think there's not going to be one point in time where, I don't know, someone's going to say now is Web3 time, government's going to announce, okay, everybody needs to have a MetaMask or a wallet. It's just not happening. It's a process.
True.
And the exciting thing is people can actually now so for example, I always like when I talk to like angels, investors, whatever, they always talk about how they make money in .com, and I was like, oh man, I wish. But if I look back, I was just like way too young to do anything exciting in Web.1, right? Because I was born in the 90s. But now it's a super exciting time because we have the same momentum for new technology, for basically the new internet, and everyone can decide for themselves whether they want to be a part of it or not. And if you decide to just like watch it, do you, or you decide to kind of like jump in and connect with people and build something. And I think that's exciting.
Yeah, great insights, and thank very much to all of you. Maybe let us leave the user side for one moment and focus on the institution side. So can we expect to see even more institutions tapping into the metaverse on the back end to offer their customer a new way of ownership? We already spoke about Meta, but what other companies do you see at the moment, and what's maybe a project that you really like in that area? Niels, would you like to start?
Yes, sure. So I think we will definitely see more institutions, let's say, increasing their metaverse activities, because I think it's kind of a loop. So on the one side, we see especially young people, potential customers or existing customers of brands and institutions doing their first steps in the metaverse. So it's obviously kind of an interesting market for brands also to sell both their maybe physical products, but also to try out new digital items. A project that I really like was the Nike acquisition of Artifact, which I think really boosted also the topic of digital fashion items, digital sneaker. I think it was a quite good choice because the sneaker community is also very, as it said, a community focused. So this is a project that I really like, and I like it because it was not an obvious choice for institution and brands. And we see a lot of brands also using their social media accounts with like millions and millions of users to address Web3 activities to address NFT activities. And when we look at their followers, it's really like taking a risk, because many of their followers might not even know what they are talking about when Nike is kind of announcing NFTs. So we can assume that many of their hundreds of millions of followers do not even understand and know the technology, but they still go into it. And with like the big leaders like Nike, Adidas, and others going into such metaverse activities, I think that now a lot of, let's say, other brands, lower tier brands, think about the same, because they look what are the industry leaders doing. And by this, I think we will see many, many more institutions and brands following, especially the brands, because they see the opportunities also in terms of marketing and showing themselves as a modern and innovative brand.
I have not much to add to this. I think like from a brand perspective or from an institutional perspective, the question is always going to be, how do you reach your customers in the best way, and how do you bring value to the customers? And the young generation, like Gen Zs or like the next generation, they are going to grow up in a fully digitalized world where it's normal to have a phone growing up, to have Fortnite skins or Minecraft skins is something that you show off with on the school court. And in order for brands to, first of all, remain relevant and reach those audiences, they also need to adapt to the space where it's like e-commerce is like the way to go. You don't go in shops anymore, like you order on Amazon or like somewhere else, and it's going to get delivered to you, and it's more and more digital, and you want to show off your digital goods as well as your physical goods. So there's gonna be much more activity from brands into this space, like 100%. Right now there's a lot of try and error as well, because it is rather new, and it is around exploring what is the best way that makes sense for my brand to enter the space and to do something that it's not a cash grab, but it's something that adds value beyond like a new piece of clothing. Something that happened a lot actually in last year in March, like just after the Beeple auction of like 70 million, a lot of brands entered the space and did art pieces that were NFTs, and they're like, hey, we're cool, we're doing NFTs, but there was no like brand relevance, and it quickly fell off the cliff. And now actually Artifact is a very good example of a fashion brand that has been acquired by Nike and is doing really like cool stuff in the space. Adidas as well, like they're very digital native, and they're doing a lot of metaverse activities that are very cool, and they're also going to push this further. One area where I'm curious to see where it's gonna go in the Web3 space is music, because like this is very much dominated still by big labels. And however, similar than from an artist perspective, I think if you're an indie musician, there is a lot of opportunities in the Web3 space to talk directly to your fan base and have them provide success in your career rather than a label that you're attached to. So it's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, I think it's a super exciting space for individual like artists to kind of like utilize from the decentralization of Web3 and get on board. And when it comes to institutionals or big companies, we've talked a lot now about like brands and fashion, because it's something that's just very obvious, right? Everyone has an avatar, they want to personalize it. So the use case is just like right there. But there's also so much more that can happen if you like think long term. For example, kind of like racing environments we see developing in game. So like in some metaverses, people are building like racetracks, and car companies can come in and kind of like have I don't know, Mercedes can come in and have virtual cars, for example, that you can also purchase through crypto and race. Or the other day I actually talked to a German bank. Obviously they were like very, very far from crypto and metaverse. They were asking like what they could potentially do in the future. And I'm seeing like 10, 15 years from now that you also have like online kind of like retail stores where people can have access to certain services. I mean, JP Morgan did it as the first one, I think, in Decentraland, and as official like metaverse bank. Like so much of abstract things, or like an insurance office, I don't know, anything can potentially be available in the metaverse or in certain metaverses, as long as it really makes sense. I think that's the only thing that's important. If companies look at the space now, please think of use cases that are relevant to your people and also potentially make sense for everyone in the future, and don't just like drop an art NFT, because it's gonna work once if you're lucky, but there's no substance.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And I think maybe that's a perfect moment to take a view on obstacles. So the question on our agenda was, what are the biggest obstacles to further institutional retail adoption? And we have a lot of questions from the chat to maybe to go in that area. So the first one was from Nina, and she asked, what with the blockchain consuming a lot of energy that's not sustainable for the climate, how long can it take for a more sustainable, less energy consuming alternative to replace it? Maybe that's not only a question for the metaverse, but maybe Marcus, can you say something to that?
So it's a very good question. It's a bit outdated by now. Like, it was a question that came up a lot like 6 to 9 months ago. However, by now, from a blockchain perspective, so there is not one blockchain. There's multiple chains, and each one of them has a different different approach. And in terms of sustainability and the ecological impact, there are a lot of chains out there that are like green or more eco-friendly than what has been the case like half a year ago. And a lot of the work that has been done in the past was really a proof of concept of showing, hey, this can work, but it has not been built to be scalable. So this is the work that is happening now. And if you like, one example I think is Polygon. Is if you like in the past, like 1 year ago, sending an NFT to someone had the ecological equivalent of driving your car X kilometers. And Polygon, as an example, if you send an NFT to someone, the equivalent is sending them an email or 2 emails or something like this. So that's it's already showing that in terms of scalability and adoption potential, it is already there. However, the stigma is still there because a lot of the from looking from an outside perspective, and me as well, talking to my parents or my family who are not at all in the space, this is also a feedback that I get quite often. But it is by now a little bit outdated and will become more and more less and less relevant actually as the market evolves and more technological steps are being taken to be compatible in that regard.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Philip, welcome to the panel discussion. Would you like to add something to the sustainability aspect of blockchain and the metaverse?
Yeah, well, sorry for being a little bit late. I had a calendar conflict which I could not resolve. But Marcel, you did an outstanding job. So next time I can stay absent, right? You do the show. So thanks for the question. Actually, I would widely agree. But still, for example, one point to highlight: the energy issue is primarily regarding Bitcoin. It's not so much regarding other chains out there. Ethereum might move away from the energy consumption at some point of time, and so on and so forth. So then the energy issue primarily sticks with Bitcoin. And in my mind, this is not necessarily an issue, because I think we should not worry so much about the energy consumption itself, because energy consumption, in my mind, is not so much relevant. Imagine the people playing computer games. Imagine people watching Netflix videos. Imagine thousands of people in Germany, for example, having Christmas lighting on the entire night, right? And you need to know that in Germany, every 50% of our electricity mix is polluting the air by CO2 emissions. That means that every second kilowatt hour is creating CO2 emissions by nature of the electricity grid in Germany. This also means that every second hour of playing computer games is polluting the air. Every second Christmas lightning throughout the entire night is also polluting the air, and so on and so forth. So therefore, to be honest, we should not care so much about the electricity which is consumed, but we have to care about the CO2 emissions which are associated with this. This is the key point, right? In my mind, it gets very dangerous in case the government decides to moralize electricity consumption, because where is an electricity consumption good one, which electricity consumption is a bad one, which electricity consumption should be forbidden, computer games, Netflix, Christmas lighting, where do we start, where do we end this discussion? And therefore, starting with electricity in my mind does not make so much sense. Therefore, we have to always care about the correlated CO2 emissions out there. And that's where the problem lies with the electricity consumed in Germany by myself, by all of you, but also with Bitcoin, of course. And here, luckily, there is some hope because the energy consumption of the Bitcoin will get a little bit greener over time. But right now, it's perfectly, as you said, it's horrible, and it also will stay like this for quite a year. We should just not forget one more thing. Bitcoin is a project which also has some benefit, right? Imagine all these people living in high inflation countries, Venezuela, Argentina, Turkey, and many other countries. Over there, you have people who are happy that Bitcoin exists because that's their only way to get out of these high inflation regimes over there, right? And therefore, keep this in mind when you are judging the electricity consumption. There is some benefit there for 10,000s of people right now, and the number of people benefiting from this is basically increasing, not decreasing. So there is also basically a benefit for this kind of costs. Everything what I'm just saying is not making it much better. I know this, but at least I'm trying to put this a little bit into context.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think that was a really good response. And one question that the chat is really curious about is regulation and lawmaking, and how regulation will maybe affect the metaverse and the further process. Niels, can you help us with this question?
Yes, because it's also a question which we tackle a lot at Pinsel, because when we look at digital assets, there is still kind of a lack of regulation and also a lack of clarity on what exactly or how exactly should regulators look at those assets. So in terms of NFTs, there were a couple of efforts to kind of put the technology NFTs into a bucket, like NFTs are securities, NFT are cryptowerte in Germany. But at the end, it really depends on the use case. So an NFT, we talked about art NFTs already, an NFT that is displaying an artwork. So the inherent value comes from the art is something completely different than an NFT, which generates future revenues, where airdrops are promised, or where you're basically fundraising an NFT project to accomplish a roadmap. So, and this has also changed a bit in the perception of the regulators over the last couple of months, that we really have to look at the technologies of the digital assets on a use case basis, which at the end, of course, is a bit confusing for the brands, the institutions that want to enter this space, because what they would like to have is the clarity on what are they offering and selling to their customers, because obviously at the end they are being held responsible for doing so. So I think this is also a process, like many of the topics we've talked about in the last 45 minutes. But it is from my perspective, some of the biggest obstacles on the supply side, because there is this uncertainty, and the companies are still do not fully trust to offer, for example, NFTs and digital assets in the metaverse. And I think as soon as those regulatories are in place, I think we will see more adoption on the supply side, on the institution and brand side, which then obviously fuels this loop that we have talked about a lot between supply, demand, consumers, and creators.
Any points to add from Leo, your perspective?
I mean, regulation, this was now news very much focusing on regulations from like a classical governmental, like in real life perspective. But if you look at some of the metaverses, there is actually regulations and governance. It's just in a new form, and that's the form of DAOs and, you know, decentralized Web3 kind of like communities. So I mean, it's a very open topic, and I think we'll see a lot of things being developed over the next couple of years. But in the future, what I see is more kind of like online environments that are governed, but they're just not governed in a way that we are used to through our like in real life states and countries, but rather through a more decentral kind of like community driven governance.
Perfect. Then there was one specific question that I would like to ask you. What do you think about, from the chat as well, what do you think about listing creation as NFTs without artists' permission? Is there any way to stop this growing phenomenon? So what do you think? Is it a big issue, and how can we maybe regulate it, or how can we deal with that? Marcus, would you like to go for this?
It's a topic that I am not at all not comfortable with. It's I don't know if it's an issue, honestly. Like, I can't answer this question like from a issue standpoint. Like, if it is, I would not know how to stop it, so I can't really provide an answer here. What the blockchain offers is that you have the proof who is the original creator, who is the owner. So you have a proof of authenticity that is always attached to the digital asset. So even if I buy the picture of a Mona Lisa, like it's known that it's not the real Mona Lisa. So there's this part of it, but I can't give a value added answer here. It's something that I will look into, because now I'm curious if it is really a topic for artists, or if it's something that is more isolated. But yeah, sorry.
No worries.
And I add a point here. So, you know, we always talk about the trustless world and so on and so forth, but and actually, you know, it can be trustless to some degree. Bitcoin is trustless, right, because of open source. But as soon as you are trying to map real world assets on a blockchain system, this can also be images, then you will have some issues to solve, because I can hide behind an anonymous Ethereum address, and I can still put there some Coca-Cola logo, which I'm then infringing upon, where I'm doing basically a crime, and nobody will ever get me because I'm hiding behind an anonymous Ethereum address, you know. So there is some issues there. I have no idea how to resolve this at this point of time, but you know, it's difficult to say, because there are also benefits out there, because in case artwork is stolen from an artist, you know, this also, it sounds maybe bad, but there is also the issue that this artist is getting reputation, outreach, and awareness by stealing his assets, right? This doesn't make it better. That's obviously absolutely clear, but it's so multifaceted, which what we are discussing here, and the real world is dealing with trademark infringements or copyright infringements since decades, and mostly it's being done. But look what happens on Amazon, right? You have so much fake brands being stored there, be it an Apple iPhone cable, or being it a bag for a handbag for women, or whatever. You know, there is so much stolen IP over there, and it's always a race, right? On the one hand side, you have criminals stealing IP. On the other hand side, you have people chasing them. It's always going one step up. It has been like this since decades, and it will stay like this in the next decades as well. Doesn't matter if you're talking about the real physical touchable world or the digital world.
Thank you very much. So I would say let's move on to the last section of our today's panel discussion. Is a talent pool meeting employer demand in this area? So Niels, what's your impression? Are you looking for people at the moment, and can you find those people, and maybe through this specific skill set that you need, maybe?
Yeah, I think that the skill set varies really from the building block of the metaverse that we are looking at. So we talked a lot about those immersive virtual worlds already. And like nowadays, so in Web 2, we have, I think, a huge talent pool in the area of UX and UI. So this is why all those platforms, social medias that also were quite clumsy in the beginning, are now like attractive to the billions of users, so that they are really like to spend the time in there. With regards to virtual worlds, we also had the comments in the chat already that the people feel that those virtual worlds are not on the level they expect maybe when they enter them. So I think this is one of the talent areas which is quite competitive at the moment. So really like talents that are able to build immersive, good-looking worlds where the people spend time in, which we also touch a bit at Pinsel, because what we also want to have obviously are virtual galleries, virtual museums, art fairs and stuff. So this is one area that I see. The other one is on the marketing side. So when we see like brands and marketeers entering the space, that they often enter it with like a mindset of Web 2, and also with different go-to-market versus go-to-community strategies. And one job role, for example, that we see a lot is a community manager, often a community manager Discord. So there are new ways of building and addressing communities, which is crucial for the success of brands in the space, which is a really like a tough job. So I know a couple of community managers from the NFT project space, because it is really key to kind of gather your community together, but then having this at some point moderated space community, which still should enable creativity. And building this community is, I think, one of the talent job profiles that we currently lack of in general. So because we need so much more new community members, because the communities are not all on this one social media anymore, but more on the brand specific and project specific communities.
Yeah, really great points. Marcus, anything to add from your side?
Yes, so there is actually a lot of demand in this space. I saw the other day that I think it was Binance, like on their job page, they have over 1,000 open positions right now. Like I think it was 1,006 or something. I saw a screenshot on social media. So it just gives you an idea of the interest of hiring people in the space. And having a project myself and hiring a team right now, it is not difficult to find people interested, but also, as I mentioned much earlier, there's a lot of different interest fields that might or might not be super relevant for the position that is being looked for. So there's a high interest and a hunger into moving into Web3 and making this the full-time job, or your the next step in your career. But as a recommendation, I would give anyone that has their job, that is an expert in a field, to learn if there is an area that is already explored and that can be adapted to the Web3 space. Like if you're a video editor, or like if you do videos, or if you do art, or like it's actually pretty low-hanging fruit. Let's take a real estate agent. Like there's companies that do real estate management, and they have a business unit that is focusing on digital real estate, like on Decentraland, Sandbox, and different other virtual worlds. And they put a focus on there, and they're brokers for brands entering the space, or for individuals looking to invest. If you do fashion, like there's a whole digital fashion world that is being built in front of our eyes, and there is a hunger of brands to hire people that want to explore the space and grow the space, but that don't see this just as something that's hip because a lot of people talk about it. I want to be part of this movement as well, but that there is a real interest in building and developing it further. So if you are interested in the space and you learn about it, try to adapt what you are an expert or what you are knowledgeable about, and look into companies and teams that do something similar. Just alone in the NFT space, there are like hundreds of companies that have been formed in the last couple of months, and they all have a different angle that I think can benefit from smart and engaged people.
Thank you very much. Philip, I heard there's a new program named NFT Talent. So maybe you can respond to the last one. How can universities and education centers or programs help to maybe get those or create those new employees and creators?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we did our experiments in the beginning, and it apparently worked very well. We have created a so-called DLT Talents program, which is just for women to apply. We get 1,600 applications per year. Then we have DeFi talents. That's primarily for people interested in DeFi, business people, IT guys, everybody out there. That's also getting 1,500 applications per year. And now we have launched a NFT talents program a couple of weeks ago, and we now have gotten 600 applications. This also totals to 1,200 applications per year. That's in total more than 4,000 applications for these 3 programs, and we might also think about launching other programs of this kind. So why does it work? I think it works because we acknowledge that all the knowledge is already there. The knowledge is in YouTube, the knowledge is on Google accessible, the knowledge is on white papers and so on, but you have to advise and guide people a little bit what to read, in which order to read, and to read at all, such that basically you need to push people a little bit, right? And in my mind, at least in the online world, traditional lecturing, as we know it from universities, doesn't make so much sense anymore because it's out there on YouTube and on other channels like this. But what all these channels missing is basically the like a gathering perspective where people are meeting regularly, they are meeting each other, they can interchange or interact with each other, and they are also getting to know other people across the world who are also interested in this. And that's basically what we are doing with our talents program. We are not lecturing because it's all out there, but we are guiding people, we are mentoring people, and we are trying to allow people to meet other people like them who are like-minded. And this approach apparently works very well. And therefore, to be honest, yes, having access to good talent is always difficult. Of course, you know, if it would be easy, then yeah, that's the nature of doing business. It's always difficult. But many things are always difficult, right? But there are good tricks, good tactics, good possibilities out there on how to access a talent out there. You know, you can work together with us, you can work with other communities, you can build your Discord channels, you can build outreach, whatever, but you also have to pay well. You might have to also decide to not pay in crazy tokens, but real money where people can pay their rent with, right? And there are so many aspects here which then increase the likelihood that you can employ people. And if you're also open-minded, that you are able to employ people outside your home country, you know, people from other European countries, or even people from the entire globe, you know, residing somewhere on our planet. You know, in case you can handle this, then I think there is an immense talent pool. But it's also dangerous. You know, yesterday I read a tweet where a DAO was basically approached by a guy searching a job, and then they found out that this was a North Korean hacker. And so in case you are acting in good faith and basically letting these people access your source code, including private keys and other things, transaction stuff and so on, then by working in a trustless environment, you will have huge risks also related to HR, because people can change the code, they can move potentially funds, they can create backdoors and so on and so forth. And therefore, I think it's a very multifaceted question there you posed, Marcel.
Yeah, thank you very much for the response. So last question, any points from you to add before we close the panel discussion? And I think it was really exciting. Where can the people reach out to you? Maybe that's the last question before we close the session of today.
Follow the Sandbox, follow RumbleCon League, and if you want to follow myself, I don't know for what reason, you can find myself on LinkedIn and on Twitter. On Twitter, my name is Direkt, which is DIREKKT. Thank you for hosting this, by the way. It was a very exciting.
Yeah, Marcel, thanks to you. You had the idea. You not just had the idea, but you also did it. You execute the idea. You approached us to do this. We need more initiatives like this, and more people taking the initiative, you know, really doing things, not just talking.
Thank you very much. Niels, you have the last words.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Marcel. It was really like a pleasure to participate. yeah, if you want to follow me, you can follow me also on LinkedIn, on Twitter. There I'm Niels116.eth. Or, and of course, also follow Pinsel. You find us at PINSL on both LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, so on the common social medias. And yeah, I'm always open for discussions about NFTs, about the metaverse. So just feel free to contact me.
Yeah, thank you very much. You can find me as well on LinkedIn and Twitter. And if you have any ideas or project, reach out. So see you the next time. Bye.
Thanks.
See you. Bye.